name's Theresa Herrera, and I've been a member of the gallery for about 20 years. And I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I moved to Louisiana in 1984, and I currently live in New Orleans. This exhibit here, which is called the Trinity, was inspired by my reflections on a book that I was reading, written by Raniero Cantalamessa, who's kind of a preacher to the Pope, and he was trying to explain the Trinity, which is not an easy subject to explain. But in my readings, in the process, I also came across an artist in my art news magazine, and she was working, she's a Chinese artist, her name is Su Li Hung from Taiwan, and she did a painting that was a triptych, and I immediately remembered how triptychs were used historically. So that all the paintings I was working on seemed to magnetically just started to come together. The first three that came together was this painting here, which is called The Three Witnesses. The three witnesses are spirit, water, and blood. And I've used water and nature as inspiration before, and I've used sacred geometry, but in this case I used them all together. And what I liked about this piece is that I was using work that's completely non-objective, work that is naturalistic to abstract, and then work that's like geometric. And I liked the fact that the conversation, that the viewer could participate in finishing the story of the three witnesses. This group of paintings captures me in a moment where I'm coming home. My work has always been about where I am spiritually, and as an artist, you're sort of the instrument where whatever spirit that you're inviting goes through you. So my work in the past has been an amalgamation of symbols and imagery from all the world's religions, because I've been exploring all of them. After the 1960s, I kind of rejected my Mexican Catholic upbringing and wanted to explore everything in search for the truth. And I think all artists are always searching for the truth, and that's what's been guiding me. I have a grandmother who I know is in heaven now, and her and my Aunt Esther, they were always praying that I would come back to the Catholic Church. And every time I would see my Aunt Esther, she would say, "So have you been to the Eucharist?" And I'd go, "Well, no, actually, I'm not going to church." And she goes, "Well, when are you gonna come back?" And I go, "Well, Tia, I'm sort of like checking out all these other churches." She says, "You don't have to check out anything. You just have to come back." And I go, I am, Tia, I will. Anyway, every time I went home and up to LA, she would ask me the same question. So as it turns out, the last time I saw her, I had made a 360 degree, had come all the way back, and had gone through all kinds of religions. I was a really good pagan heathen, and then I went through all kinds of Christian, Protestant, non-denominationals, and then I just felt the call to come back to the Catholic Church. And that's when the Catholic Church was finally getting its act together, because then it started to open up the Bible, which the Protestants opened the Bible for me. And I thought, oh great, you know, I finally can use what I've read as inspiration for my work. And then the Catholic Church has a rich treasure of sayings from the saints, which is the next painting, which is Saint Theresa of Lisieux. Saint Theresa of Lisieux is a saint, a French saint, and she died when she was very young, about 23, and as part of her way, she wrote down her thoughts, and it was called The Little Way. Anyway, I picked up this real small little book on her quotations, and I used it as a springboard for some of my ideas. And so the first one, which is the cloudscape, it's called Troubles and Suffering, and it says, above the clouds, the sky is always blue. And then I used another quote from her on doubt, and which is represented by this painting. There are souls for whom God's mercy never tires of waiting, and to whom he grants his light only by degrees. So you have to be really patient as those rays hit you. And then this is my favorite one. It's a call to holiness. I offered myself to the child Jesus as his little plaything. And this is Theresa de Lisieux speaking. I told him not to use me as a valuable toy children are content to look at, but dare not to touch, but to use me like a little ball of no value, which he could throw on the ground, push with his foot, pierce, leave in the corner, or press to his heart if it pleased him. And I just love her surrender, and it gave me a perfect vehicle to express that innocence and that joy. And again, the underlying theme of the formally of the Trinity, again, the three of them, just magnetically, they came together. And again, you have the nature, the realistic, and sort of the abstract, again, put together. When I first started this body of work, I opened up a lot of my sketchbooks, and in fact, I've dated them from the past 20 years. And I believe a sketchbook is an idea bank where you deposit all your ideas and you go back and you withdraw them. And this body of work is starting a whole fresh period for me because I just retired from teaching art. And so I have the opportunity to work full time. So I thought, how would be the best way to feel really liberated in starting my painting? And so the first painting I did in this series was this painting. And I wanted the paint to just flow on the canvas. It was a bleed of colors, and I used a medium, a free flow release medium on the surface that made the paint even bleed more. I let it dry, and I was gonna allow it to suggest what it wanted to be. I did the same thing to this painting as well. This center panel came later as I resolved the composition. When I saw this one, I visualized Our Lady of Guadalupe in the corner. Our Lady of Guadalupe is the patroness of the Americas, and my mother's named after Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I imagined how Juan Diego would have maybe seen her illuminated on the hill with this really intense bright light around her. And again, I let the paint just puddle around formally, and then made her, I painted her very realistically. In here, it is the two ovals that overlap, and I've used these overlapping ovals before to create my guardian shield, which absorbs the light and reflects the dark. And whenever I have a spiral in my work, and I've used a spiral for many years, it's to represent God in the painting. So I try to sneak it in somewhere, or sometimes it is formally in the center of the composition. And then because Our Lady of Guadalupe is the patroness of the Americas, and she's really the reason that I'm Catholic, because if she hadn't come to Mexico, well, I would still be an Aztec, and I would probably still be offering they'd be offering virgins and babies and throwing them off the pyramids. So she showed up on the hill of a goddess, of an Aztec goddess, and converted thousands of Aztecs immediately, and continues to have a powerful influence over the Aztecs. And in the middle of the Aztec calendar is a hieroglyph. And this hieroglyph, which I've kind of custom made into a labyrinth, I made a floor labyrinth about 26 by 26 feet, I guess about 10 years ago, a walking labyrinth. And it was called the Quinto Sol. And the reason this hieroglyph is called the Quinto Sol is that it represents the 5 creation stories of the Aztecs. So each one of these creation stories tells about how Aztecs were destroyed by water and fire and wind and earthquakes. And the last creation cycle, they were going to be destroyed, and they prophesied that it was going to be cataclysmic. It would be the end of their civilization. Well, when Cortez came and conquered Moctezuma and Tenochtitlan, he essentially destroyed the aristocracy of the Aztecs, but he didn't destroy the culture, the Mexica. So many contemporary Mexicans believe they're in the 6th sun, and I tend to agree with them as a Chicana, which is kind of a militant Mexican American, that we're in the 6th sun, that you indeed didn't destroy the whole civilization. So I put the Quinto Sol hieroglyph in the center between the Guadalupe and my yin yang shield painting, which is called the Annunciation, and Redeemer in the Womb. Redeemer in the Womb. And it's a triptych. It was supposed to be a traditional Annunciation with Mary and the angel Gabriel. And I had it sketched out, but it just didn't seem right. And I have worked with doing a series of yarn paintings where I used ultrasounds to show the development of the fetus developing from the single cell of the mother to the zygote, all the way to the baby in a 3D ultrasound to show the development of a human person in a woman's womb. And I thought that how could I represent the conception of Jesus in the womb using the cell division? And so this is Mary's cell in an amphora, which is sort of the clay pot, which is the symbol for the human body, and with the Holy Spirit that's breathing on her. And she has to say yes to this conception. But the minute she says yes, then the Trinity breathes on her, and the cell division begins. And so this is her chromosomes. The purple is her chromosomes, because purple is for suffering. And this is Jesus's chromosome, because gold is divine. And then white for purity. And Mary is always clothed in blue for celestial. And I used the clouds to again make it more ethereal. This group of paintings sort of moves me to be more conscious of the content of my work, and I'm very, very pleased that as an artist I get to represent not only my own personal feelings, but also my theology
in the work.